For 41 years, I carried other people's dinners to their tables. Rich people. The kind who leave a car running out front so it stays cool while they eat. I set the plate down, I stepped back, I waited by the wall where the good stuff waits. Close enough to pour, far enough to disappear. And in all that time, I could count on one hand the number of them who ever looked me in the eye and asked how I was doing. Not what I recommend, how I was doing. There is a difference, and after 4 decades you feel that difference in your bones.
Hello, I'm Peter Walker, and this is Abroad Pal, where we sit down with people who left home and built a life somewhere new. The man you heard there is Ray Kowalski. Ray is 71. He spent 41 years on his feet as a waiter at a country club in Akron, Ohio, standing against the wall he described, pouring wine for people who never once learned his name. Then he lost his wife, and then he lost the job. And on $1,600 a month, he did something his own kids called crazy. He got on a one-way flight to a small town up in the hills of the Philippines. Before we get to that plane, I want to know the man. Ray, tell me how a kid from Akron ended up carrying other people's dinners for 4 decades, and what that club kept promising you along the way.
My name is Ray Kowalski. I am 71 years old and I grew up in Akron, Ohio, back when Akron still made the tires that rolled under half the cars in America. My father worked rubber. His hands were cracked and black in the creases no matter how he scrubbed them, and he was proud of that. I did not have the hands for the plant. I had a bad back by 20 and a way of remembering things, so I went into service. A country club out by Silver Lake, the kind of place with a gate and a long drive and men in green blazers who never once carried their own bags. I started there at 29. Bussing tables first, then serving, then the wine, and I was good. I want you to understand that because it matters to the rest of this. So I was not a man who drifted through a job. I knew every member by name. I knew how Mr. Prendergast took his steak and that his wife could not have shellfish and that their son, the loud one, would send back the first drink no matter what. So I learned to make his first drink weak and cheap and save the good pour for the second. I remembered anniversaries. I remembered which widowers came in on the nights they came in because the house was too quiet. And I sat a little longer at those tables, topped the coffee without being asked. That was the craft. Nobody teaches it. You either see people or you do not. And I saw them. And they told me it would add up to something. That is the part I need to say plain, because I spent a long time too ashamed to say it. The manager, a man named Gordon, who ran the club for 30 of my years there, he would put his arm around me every December at the staff dinner and say, Ray, next year we make it official. Floor manager, partner in the dining room, we are going to take care of you. And one year, they did give me a title. Floor manager, it said, on a little brass pin. Same apron, same tray. Same aching feet on the same towel at 11 at night. Now I also did the schedules and broke up the fights in the kitchen and covered the shifts nobody wanted, and there was no more money in it, not a dollar. The title lived on the pin and nowhere else. On paper in the office where it counted, I was a waiter. I found that out later in the worst possible way. I believed Gordon. Every year I believed him. My wife Carol used to say I would believe a man was drowning if he told me the water was warm. She said it kind, the way she said most things. We married when I was 26. She worked the register at a pharmacy on Market Street, and she had this laugh that did not fit her. This big laugh out of a small, quiet woman. And the first time I heard it, I think I decided the whole rest of my life right there. We had 2 kids. Karen, who lives in Columbus now, and Danny, out in Denver. We had a little house on the street where the maples went red all at once in October, and we paid it off slow over 30 years. And we told each other that someday we would go somewhere warm. That was our word. Someday. Carol clipped pictures out of the travel magazines at the doctor's office. Beaches, blue water. She kept them in the kitchen drawer under the take-up menus, and every few years she would take them out and spread them on the table, and we would pick one. And then Monday would come and the tray would be back in my hands. Someday never came for Carol. She got sick when she was 63. It went fast, which the doctors kept calling a mercy, and I have never once been able to make that word fit in my mouth. 14 months from the first appointment to the last. She died in a hospital I had driven past 1,000 times without ever imagining the inside of it. And after the funeral, I did the only thing I knew how to do, which was go back to work. 11 days after I buried my wife, I was standing against that wall in my apron, pouring wine for a table of 8 who were laughing about a golf score, and not one of them knew, and why would they? I was the furniture that brought the bread. I kept at it 5 more years, 66, 67, 68. The feet got worse. The members got younger and looked through me the same as the old ones had. And then the club got sold. New ownership, a company out of Chicago that owned 12 clubs and ran them off a spreadsheet. And they came through in the spring with clipboards and they let people go by the number on the payroll. My number said waiter. 41 years, a brass pin in a drawer, a stack of Decembers, where a man put his arm around me and lied. And on the spreadsheet, I was a 70-year-old waiter making the top of the waiter scale, which meant I was expensive and replaceable in the same breath. They gave me an envelope and 2 weeks. The young man who handed it to me could not hold my eye either. Runs in that whole world, I suppose. Not looking at the people who carry your plates. I drove home that afternoon and I sat in the driveway of the paid-off house for a long time without going in. Because going in meant Carol was not there to tell it to. And the wanting to tell her was worse than the news itself. 70 years old. No wife. A pension that came to almost nothing because the club had switched us to a cheaper plan back in the 90s. And I had signed the paper Gordon slid across the desk without reading it. The way I signed everything. Because he told me the water was warm. Social Security and that little bit. $1,600 a month. Once Medicare took its cut. In Akron, $1,600 is the rent and the heat and not much daylight after that. I sat in that driveway and I did the math I had been avoiding for years. And the math said I had given a rich man's club the whole of my working life and I had come out the other end with less than the busboys I had trained. And I want to tell you the thing that broke first because it was not the money. I could have gone quiet on the money. What broke was a smaller thing, and it had been sitting in me for 40 years without a name. I reached into the kitchen drawer that night, under the menus, and I found Carol's magazine clippings. And there was one on top, a beach, palm trees, water so blue it looked painted. And on the back in her handwriting, she had written one word years before I ever thought I would be a widower reading it alone at a kitchen table. And that word is the reason I am sitting on this porch on the other side of the world telling you any of this at all.
Ray, you left us hanging on a single word, and I will let you get to it. But I want to sit with what came before. 41 years, a brass pin in a drawer, and a pension they cut while you signed the paper without reading it. A lot of people watching know that exact feeling, the promise that never turns into money. So, when you opened that drawer and read what Carol wrote on the back of a beach, what did that word tell you? And what did you decide to do about it?
The word she wrote on the back of that beach was soon. Not someday, soon. Somewhere in the years, She had quit believing in someday and started writing soon, and she never told me. And she ran out of soons before I ever gave her one. I sat at that table with the clipping in my hand, and I understood that I had spent my whole life waiting for men who lied to me to make good. And the one person who never lied to me had waited for me. And I let her wait until there was no more time. I did not sleep that night. I did not sleep much for a while. What turned it from grief into plan was a man named Eddie Reyes. Eddie and I worked the line together for the better part of 20 years. He came over from the Philippines in his 30s, worked the club as a cook, then a captain, and Eddie was the one man in that building who talked to me like we were the same size. Because we were. We closed 1,000 nights together, him and me, scraping plates at midnight and splitting a beer in the parking lot. Eddie went home to a town called Valencia about 6 years before all this. Up in the hills, above a city on an island I could not have found on a map. And every few months a letter would come, a real letter on paper, because Eddie did not trust the computer. Ray, he wrote, you would not believe what my pension buys here. Ray, come see it before you die at that club. Come sit on my porch. I always wrote back something polite and put the letters in the drawer, the same drawer under the same menus next to Carol's peaches. The night after they let me go, I dug out Eddie's last letter and I read it like a different man was reading it. He had put numbers in it, the way he always did, because Eddie knew I loved a number. Rent, he wrote. Food, what the doctor cost. And the numbers did not look real. I got the computer out, the one Carol used to use, and I started reading. And it was 2 in the morning before I looked up. Then it was 2 in the morning the next night. And the next. For a couple of months, I lived 2 lives. In the day, I was a laid-off old waiter sending out applications nobody answered, because who hires a 70-year-old with one skill and a bad back? At night, I was learning everything a man could learn about a country on the far side of the earth. The visas, the cost of a house, what a doctor charged to look at you without insurance, which turned out to be less than my copay had been back home. Every road I ran the numbers down came out the same. On my $1,600 in Ohio, I was going to spend my last years counting change at the grocery store and turning the heat down to 58 and dying in a house that echoed. On my $1,600 where Eddie was, I could live. Not scrape. Live. And more than the money, which I will get to. There was a picture in my head I could not shake. Eddie on a porch, somebody bringing him coffee. A man his age, my age, and somebody bringing him coffee instead of the other way around. I had carried the coffee my whole life. I did not even know what the other side of that felt like. I told my kids at a Sunday dinner at Karen's place in Columbus. I made myself do it in person. I got about 4 sentences in. The Philippines, Eddie, the numbers, before Karen put her fork down. Dad, you are 70 years old. You have never been out of the country. You do not know a soul there except one man you have not seen in 6 years. Danny was on the speakerphone from Denver and he was worse because Danny is an engineer and he had questions with edges on them. What about your heart? What about when you fall? Who finds you? Who buries you? And I sat there and I took it, because every word came out of love, and every word was also a hug. And I knew the difference by then. Karen said the thing that stung. Near the end, she said, Dad, is this about Mom? And I said no, and that was a lie. And she knew it, and I knew she knew it. Of course it was about her mother. It was about a drawer full of peaches and a woman who wrote, soon and never got one. But I could not say that at the dinner table without coming apart, so I said no. And I looked at my plate, the way I had looked at 1,000 plates while people talked over my head. Here is what I did not tell them because it would have scared them more. I had already started selling things. I sold Carol's car first, then the furniture, piece by piece on the computer. Strangers coming to the door to carry off the couch we picked out in 1988. I kept almost nothing. Her wedding ring on a chain, the kids' baby pictures, my father's watch, and the drawer. I emptied the drawer into an envelope and I kept every beach and I kept the word soon. Everything else I let go, and I will tell you, once you start letting go, it gets easier, it gets almost light. A man spends his whole life thinking the stuff is the life. It is not. I put 41 years of a life into 2 suitcases and there was room to spare. I rented out the house instead of selling it because Karen begged me to keep one foot in Ohio, and that turned out to be the smartest thing I did, so I will give her that. Then I booked the ticket, one way. I did not tell the kids it was one way. I told them I was going to visit Eddie and C, and I flew out of Cleveland on a gray morning in March with sleet coming down sideways, 70 years old, having never flown further than Florida in my life, with 2 suitcases and an envelope of my dead wife's peaches toward a man on a porch on an island I still could not pronounce. The flying was its own kind of hard, close to 30 hours with the layovers. Somewhere over the ocean in the dark, everyone around me asleep, I had a bad hour. I sat there thinking, Ray, you old fool. You sold the couch. You sold Carol's car. You are flying to nowhere on the word of one man and a stack of magazine pictures. What have you done? And then the sun came up over the wing, and there was nothing but water down there. This blue that I swear I had seen before, and it took me a second to place it, and then I did. It was the blue on the back of the clippings. It was Carol's blue, and I stopped shaking. I did not know yet that I was 3 days away from the first time in my adult life that somebody would set a plate down in front of me and tell me to sit.
Right, hold it right there, because you buried something important in that story. You did not only book a trip, you sold Carol's car, you sold the couch, you rented out the house, and you flew one way without telling your kids it was one way. That is a bigger bet than most people will make at any age, let alone 70. I have watched folks talk themselves out of this for a decade. So when you finally landed, when Eddie met you at that airport, what were those first days like on the ground?
Eddie met me at the little airport in Dumaguete with a cardboard sign that said Ray on it in marker, which made me laugh so hard I nearly cried. Because in 41 years, nobody had ever held up a sign with my name. He drove me up into the hills in a borrowed van up to Valencia, where the air moves and at night you want a light blanket, which in that heat is a gift beyond telling. And the first evening, his wife set a plate in front of me at their table. Rice and a fish caught that morning and something sour and green I did not know the name of yet. And she said, sit, Ray, eat. And I stood up to help carry, because 41 years my body did not know how to do anything else at the table but serve it. And she looked at me like I had lost my mind and pushed me back down into the chair. That was the first crack in me. A woman I had known for 2 hours, telling me to sit while she brought me food. And I felt it come up my throat before I could stop it, this heat behind my eyes, and I turned my face to the window because 41 years of standing against a wall teaches a man to hide his face, and I was not going to cry at this kind woman's table on my first night. My hands were shaking on the fork. Eddie saw. Of course Eddie saw. He put his hand on my shoulder, and he did not say a word. And that was worse. That was almost the end of me. Because in 4 decades, nobody had put a hand on my shoulder and let it mean something. I got through the meal. I lay awake that whole first night in Eddie's spare room with the fan going, and I let it come. Then, quiet. into the pillow, an old man of 70 crying because somebody set a plate in front of him and told him to sit. I found my own place within the month. A small concrete house, they call them bungalows, up a lane in Valencia with a calamansi tree in the yard. That is a little Filipino lime, and a porch that runs the length of the front where I am sitting right now talking to you. Let me give you the numbers, because I know some of you came for the numbers, and I was you a couple years ago, reading them off a screen at 2 in the morning and not believing them. The rent is 12,000 pesos a month. In real money, that is about $210 for a whole house, with a yard and a tree that gives me lines for my fish. My electric runs maybe $40, $50 when I run the one air conditioner in the bedroom at night. Less when I am tough about it and stick to the fan. Water is almost nothing, a few dollars. Good fast internet 30. So the roof over my head and the lights and the connection, call it 300 a month, all in. Big in Akron, that was 1800 and climbing. You see the difference. It is not a little better. It is a different planet. Food. I eat better here than I ate in my life, and I served food for a living. There is a little place down the lane, a carinderia they call it, where a woman lifts the lids off a row of pots and you point at what you want. A plate of rice and 2 dishes, some pork stew sweet and dark, a soup runs me $1.50. The fish comes up from the coast in the morning still stiff. I'd buy a whole one for a couple of dollars and squeeze my own limes on it. My food for the month, eating out most days, comes to maybe 350. Add it up, the whole life, rent and lights and food and my little wants, and I am living well under 1,000 a month. My 1,600 comes in on the third Wednesday, like the tide, and for the first time since I was a young man, there is money left at the end of it. A waiter from Akron putting money away in his 70s. Carol would not have believed it. Some nights I still do not. But the money was never the thing. I told you that at the start and I meant it. The thing has a name, and her name is Marivich. Marivich comes twice a week and keeps my house. She's 44, lives down the road, her husband drives a tricycle and they have 3 kids. She washes my clothes and irons my shirts and will not let me touch a dish. And the title of this whole thing, a man who spent his life serving and now being served, it sounds sweet when you say it fast, but I need you to understand it did not come sweet. It came hard. It came on like sandpaper. The first day Marivik came, I followed her around my own house trying to help. I reached for the broom and she took it back. I grabbed the other end of the sheet to fold it and she gave me a look. She stopped in the middle of the room and said, "Sir Ray, this is my job. You are making it harder." And it went through me like a current, because I had said that. Not those words, but that feeling I had felt it 10,000 times against that wall at the club. The feeling of a customer who will not let you do the thing they are paying you to do, who hovers and second guesses and treats you like a child who cannot be trusted to carry a plate. I had hated that man for 41 years, and here I was, being him. I made myself sit down, and I want to tell you, sitting down was the hardest thing I have done on this island. Harder than the paperwork, harder than the language. I sat on my own porch and let another human being mop my floor. Me, career waiter, and heat came up my neck that was pure shame. Like I was betraying every busboy I ever worked beside. Like I had crossed over and joined the people who leave the car running. Here is what turned the shame into something else. And it is the most important thing I have learned out here. I pay Maravich well, more than the going rate and a bonus at Christmas. And when her youngest needed an operation on his ear, I covered it. And it cost me about 1 month of cable and internet cost me back in Ohio. That money does not vanish. It put her oldest into the first year of nursing school. Her daughter is going to wear the Y uniform and hold a clipboard in a hospital. A real career, the kind Gordon dangled in front of me for 30 years and never gave. And part of the reason is that an old waiter from Akron needed somebody to iron his shirts. The day I understood that, I stopped being the man who leaves the car running. I was not looking down at Marievich from some hill. I knew exactly what her work was worth because I had done it. I had been invisible doing it. And now, for the first time in my life, I was on the side of the table where I could pay it what it was worth and look the person in the eye while I did. We eat lunch together most days she comes. She taught me to cook adobo. That is the national dish. And I make it better now than anything I made in Ohio. Her kids call me Lola Ray. Lola means grandfather. Her husband fixes my motorbike and will not take money for it. So I buy the diesel and we call it even, and both of us know it is not even and neither of us cares. I have to tell you about the members, not here, back there. Because there was one day at the club, I was maybe 45 and a member's guest, a woman in a fur even though it was May. She wanted the ladies' room and I walked her to it. And on the way back she said to her friend, not to me, about me. These people are always so pleasant. These people. I have carried those two words for 30 years. That is what I was. One of these people. The pleasant furniture. And out here, on this lane, in this heat, an old woman 2 doors down named Nanai eating, who has less in her whole house than I threw away in Akron. She brings me a bowl of something she cooked because she cooked too much and thought of me. Nobody has ever thought of me with a bowl. In 4 decades of carrying bowls to people who did not see me, not one of them ever carried one back. I walk down to the market most mornings before the heat gets serious, and they know me. The fish woman saves me the good tuna and scolds me about my Visayan, which is terrible after 3 years. And they love that it is terrible. They love that I try. The kids on the lane yell, Lola Ray, good morning, Lola Ray, at 3 in the afternoon, because they have the greeting but not the clock yet. And I would not correct them for the world. I go into the little store on the corner, and the man hands me my coffee before I ask. Everybody knows my order, my bad knee, my worst Visayan. In Akron, I could go a whole weekend, Friday night to Monday, and not one living person would say my name out loud. Here I cannot walk to buy lime without 3 people saying it. Once a week, I take the jeepney down out of the hills into Dumaguete, down to the water, and I walk the Rizal Boulevard as the sun goes down. Families out on the seawall, kids selling balao, the little tables, where you sit with a cold drink and watch the boats come in. I live up in the cool of the mountains, but I come down to the water when I need to remember how far I have traveled from that deal floor in Ohio. And every lane in this country up in the hills or down by the sea has a karaoke machine going somewhere after dark. Some old boy murdering a Frank Sinatra song at full volume. And back home, that would have driven me up the wall. And here it makes me smile every time, because it is the sound of people who are not afraid to be heard. I was afraid to be heard for 70 years. I settled into all of it. The porch in the morning, the limes, lunch with Marievich, Lola Ray at the market. I let myself believe, after 3 years of it, that the hard part was behind me, and the rest was going to be gentle. And then one night, about 8 months ago, I woke up at 2 in the morning with my left arm gone numb and a fist closing in the middle of my chest, alone in a concrete house on the side of a mountain, 8,000 miles from anyone who shared my last name. And I want to tell you exactly what happened next, because it is the whole reason I know what I know now about where I have landed.
You walked us through the whole life: the porch, the limes, Maravich, a market that knows your coffee order. And then you set us down at 2 in the morning with your arm gone numb on the side of a mountain. That right there is the fear I hear more than any other from people your age. What happens if I get sick over there, alone, so far from my kids? Folks stay stuck in Ohio for years over that one question. So I have to ask you straight, Ray. That night, when the fist closed in your chest, what happened next?
I got myself to the phone and I called Mary Vish because hers was the name my thumb found, and that tells you something right there. It was 2 in the morning and her husband was at my gate in under 10 minutes on the tricycle, in the rain, still half asleep, and Mary Vish behind him. They did not drive me to the small hospital in Valencia. They drove me down the mountain to the bigger one in Dumaguete, 40 minutes in the dark and the rain. Marivik in the back holding my hand and telling me to breathe, breathe, Sir Ray. And I did not believe her, but I breathed because she told me to. It was not a heart attack. The doctor, a sharp young woman who trained in Manila. She ran the tests through the night, the tracing of my heart, the blood, all of it. And in the morning she sat on the edge of my bed, sat down, and spent 45 minutes with me. She told me it was my heart trying to warn me, the pressure and the years and the salt, and that I had time to fix it if I listened. 45 minutes. I have not had an American doctor look at me for 45 minutes in my whole life. And then she gave me her own cell phone number, her personal number, and told me to text her if the arm went numb again. Try getting your specialist cell phone in Ohio. The whole thing. 2 nights in a private room, the tests, the tracing, the drips, the doctor, the pills I take now. Came to a little under $400. I paid it out of the cushion in my account and I walked out under my own power. That same night in an American emergency room, before they even found the trouble, would have started a bill that followed me around like a stray dog for a year and outlived me if I let it. I asked the woman at the desk twice if she had the number right. She had it right. And here is the part I keep coming back to. I was nobody to these people, a foreigner 3 years in, and they did not leave me alone for 1 hour. Marivi closed down her whole week and sat with me, because in that hospital the family feeds you, the nurses do not, and Marivik had decided she was my family and spooned rice porridge into me, 1 careful spoon at a time. Her husband lost 2 days of furs on the tricycle and never once let it show. Nanai eating from 2 doors down, sent soup up the mountain with her grandson on a motorbike. I lay in that bed, an old waiter who spent 41 years being invisible to the people he served, and I broke. I do not have a softer word for it. A grown man of 70, hooked up to the machines. And I put my hands over my face and I wept. The kind that shakes your whole chest, because I finally understood the thing at the bottom of all of it. Marivik heard me, and she came around the bed and she took my hand in both of hers, and she was crying too. This woman who cleans my house, crying over me. And she said, Sir Ray, do not cry. We are here. We are not leaving. And that only made it worse and better at the same time. Somebody would have noticed if I did not come home. In Akron, at the end, nobody had to notice. I had gone invisible in my own life. Out here on the far side of the earth, among people who owed me nothing, I was somebody they would drive down a mountain in the rain for. Somebody a cleaning woman would weep over in a hospital at dawn. I called Karen from the hospital. I had not planned to, but I was raw, and I wanted my daughter, and I told her all of it. The arm, the drive, the $400, the doctor who sat down. And there was a long quiet, and then she said, Dad, I am coming. And she came. 2 weeks later, my daughter, who had told me at her own dinner table that I had lost my mind, stepped off that little plane into the heat, with her mouth set to bring me home. And I watched Valencia go to work on her. She watched Marivis set my plate down and tell me to sit. She watched the fish woman save me the tuna. She watched Nana eating hand her a bowl she had not asked for. She watched a whole lane of people who were not related to me by a drop of blood call her father Lolo and Monit. On her last night we sat on this porch and she was quiet for a long time. And then she said, "Dad, I spent all this time scared you were out here alone. And you are the least alone I have ever seen you. I did not know what you looked like when somebody was taking care of you. I forgot it was even a thing that could happen to you. Danny has not come yet. He's busy the way I was busy, telling himself there is time. But we talk now, real talks, not the once a month duty call. And Karen brings the grandkids on video and they have learned to say Lolo Ray, and I am telling you, 8,000 miles is nothing when somebody makes the time. And out here, I have the time. I have nothing but time. And I have learned it is the only thing I was ever short of. I will not sit here and paint you a postcard because that would be another kind of lie. And I'm done with those. The heat in April will defeat you. There are days it sits on you like a wet coat and you surrender to it and do nothing until fall. The power goes out. The brown outs and you sit in the dark and sweat and wait. The paperwork to stay here legal is its own slow misery. A full day in an office to be told to come back tomorrow with one more photocopy. And there is a loneliness that never fully lifts, a specific one, that I would be lying to leave out. I am always going to be the foreigner here. At the deepest moment of a fiesta, when the whole lane is singing some song they have all known since they were 3. There is a small gap where I feel it, where I am close to the fire and not all the way in. I miss autumn. I miss the maples going red all at once. I miss a woman who has been gone 7 years now with an ache that this warm air softens but does not cure. But those bad days are clouds going over something warm. Back in Akron, the bad days were the whole sky. Let me tell you what an ordinary day is now, because the ordinary is the point. I wake up without an alarm, which after 41 years of closing shifts is a luxury I have not stopped noticing. I make my coffee, the real stuff they grow right here on the mountain, and I sit on this porch and watch the mist burn off the hills. I walk down for whatever is fresh. I come home, I fix something, I'm handy. The lane has half adopted me as the old man who can fix a fan. In the hot part of the day, I lie in the hammock, and if you had told the man against that wall at the club, the one with the aching feet at 11 at night, that someday he would take a guilt-free nap in a hammock on a Tuesday, he would have called you a liar to your face. A few weeks ago, it was my birthday, 71. I did not tell a soul because I'm not built for a fuss, and Marivik let on like she had forgotten too, which should have warned me, because that woman forgets nothing. I came up the lane from the market with my bag of fish and my house was full. Marivik and her husband and the 3 kids. Nana eating. The fish woman had closed her stall early and calm. Eddie drove up from his place, the man from the corner store. 20 people in my little concrete house, people who 3 years ago I had never met, who owed me nothing. And Marivik's mother had made kare, this oxtail stew, because somewhere along the way she had found out it was becoming my favorite and she never forgot. And I stood in my own doorway with a bag of fish in my hand and I could not go in, because it hit me all at once and my legs would not carry me over the step. I was thinking about the other room, the one in Akron, the apartment I would be sitting in right now if I had listened to the fear, alone, with the heat turned down to 58, waiting for a phone that did not ring, counting change until I died in a chair and waited a week to be found. And I looked at this loud, warm, crowded little room full of people who somehow needed me. The old handyman, the Lolo, the man who fixes fans, and the bag of fish slipped right out of my hand onto the floor. and I stood there in my own doorway and cried in front of all of them. 20 people, and not one of them looked away. Not one of them was embarrassed for me. Marivi's youngest, the one whose ear I paid to fix, he came and wrapped his arms around my legs. And I understood the only math that ever mattered. 20 people in a small room against an empty one. That is not a hard sum. That is the easiest one I ever did, and it took me 70 years and 8,000 miles to get to it. For 41 years, I set the plate down and stepped back to the wall. I poured the wine and I disappeared. And I told myself that was my place because a manager who lied to me said so. And a woman in a fur called me these people. And I believed them the way I believed everyone, right up until a country I could not pronounce set a plate down in front of me and told me to sit. I did not know until somebody finally served me that I had spent my whole life starving for it. Not for the food. For somebody to think I was worth carrying the bowl to. Marevich set that first plate down 3 years ago and told me to sit, and I have not for one single day since stopped being grateful that I did. I never felt important a day in my life. 71 years. And I had to fly to the other side of the world, to a lane full of people who have almost nothing, to find out that being important was never about the title on the pin or the money in the account. It was about a room that fills up when it matters. Mine fills up now. And whatever years this worn old heart has left in it, I am going to spend them right here on this porch, in this warm air, being Lola Ray. A man without much, maybe, but not, I have learned, a man without a home.
Ray Kowalski spent 70 years believing his place was against the wall because a manager who lied to him said so, and a woman in a fur called him these people, and he believed them the way he believed everyone. Then a town he could not pronounce set a plate in front of him and told him to sit. That is the move that matters here, and it has almost nothing to do with the $1,600. The money bought him the door. He walked through a room that fills up when it matters. Now, I told you at the start that my job on this channel is to be straight with you. So let me be. Ray got a lot right, and he got lucky in a couple of places he should not have counted on. He flew one way, with a heart he now knows was already warning him, on the word of one old friend and a drawer of magazine pictures. That worked for him. It does not always. The people I watch struggle abroad are usually the ones who leaped on feeling alone and skipped the groundwork. Ray had Eddie, a man on the inside who had already built the life and could meet him at that airport with a sign. That is worth more than any bank balance. If you are dreaming about a move like this, the first thing to build is not a budget. It is a person on the ground. He got 2 more things right that I want you to steal. He rented the house instead of selling it. So he kept 1 foot in Ohio and a way back if the whole thing fell apart. And he chose a place for the people, not only the prices. Plenty of towns are cheap. The one that saves you is the one where somebody notices when you do not come home. Ray went wrong for most of his life in one spot, and he would tell you this himself. He signed papers he never read and trusted men who told him the water was warm. Do not carry that habit across an ocean. Read the visa rules yourself. Get your heart looked at before you fly, and know where the nearest good hospital sits before you need it at 2 in the morning. Ray did the hardest sum a person can do. 20 people in a small room against an empty one. He landed on the right answer, and it cost him 70 years and 8,000 miles to get there. Most of us have less runway than we think, and more room to change the ending than we let ourselves believe. I'm Peter Walker. If this helped, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.